Section 18 of the American Crisis by Thomas Paine. A Supernumerary Crisis. To the People of America. Published New York, December 9th, 1783. In Rivington's New York Gazette of December 6th is a publication under the appearance of a letter from London, dated September 30th, and is on a subject which demands the attention of the United States. The public will remember that a treaty of commerce between the United States and England was set on foot last spring, and that until the said treaty could be completed, a bill was brought into the British Parliament by the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mr. Pitt, to admit and legalize, as the case then required, the commerce of the United States into the British ports and dominions. But neither the one nor the other has been completed. The commercial treaty is either broken off or remains as it began, and the bill in Parliament has been thrown aside. And in lieu thereof, a selfish system of English politics has started up, calculated to fetter the commerce of America by engrossing to England the carrying trade of the American produce to the West India Islands. Among the advocates for this last measure is Lord Sheffield, a member of the British Parliament, who has published a pamphlet entitled Observations on the Commerce of the American States. The pamphlet has two objects. The one is to allure the Americans to purchase British manufactures, and the other to spirit up the British Parliament to prohibit the citizens of the United States from trading to the West India Islands. Viewed in this light, the pamphlet, though in some parts dexterously written, is an absurdity. It offends in the very act of endeavoring to ingratiate, and his lordship, as a politician, ought not to have suffered the two objects to have appeared together. The latter alluded to contains extracts from the pamphlet, with high encomiums on Lord Sheffield for laboriously endeavoring, as the letter styles it, to show the mighty advantages of retaining the carrying trade. Since the publication of this pamphlet in England, the commerce of the United States to the West Indies in American vessels has been prohibited, and all intercourse, except in British bottoms, the property of and navigated by British subjects, cut off. That a country has a right to be as foolish as it pleases has been proved by the practice of England for many years past. In her island situation, sequestered from the world, she forgets that her whispers are heard by other nations, and in her plans of politics and commerce she seems not to know that other votes are necessary besides her own. America would be equally as foolish as Britain were she to suffer so great a degradation on her flag, and such a stroke on the freedom of her commerce, to pass without a balance. We admit the right of any nation to prohibit the commerce of another into its own dominions, where there are no treaties to the contrary. But, as this right belongs to one side as well as the other, there is always a way left to bring avarice and insolence to reason. But the ground of security which Lord Sheffield has chosen to erect his policy upon is of a nature which ought, and I think must, awaken in every American a just and strong sense of national dignity. Lord Sheffield appears to be sensible that in advising the British nation and Parliament to engross to themselves so great a part of the carrying trade of America, he is attempting a measure which cannot succeed, if the politics of the United States be properly directed to counteract the assumption. But, says he in his pamphlet, it will be a long time before the American states can be brought to act as a nation. Neither are they to be feared as such by us. What is this more or less than to tell us that while we have no national system of commerce, the British will govern our trade by their own laws and proclamations as they please? The quotation discloses a truth too serious to be overlooked, and too mischievous not to be remedied. Among other circumstances which led them to this discovery, none could operate so effectually as the injudicious, uncandid, and indecent opposition made by sundry persons in a certain state to the recommendations of Congress last winter for an import duty of 5%. It could not but explain to the British a weakness in the national power of America, and encourage them to attempt restrictions on her trade, which otherwise they would not have dared to hazard. Neither is there any state in the Union whose policy was more misdirected to its interest than the state I allude to, because her principal support is the carrying trade, which Britain, induced by the want of a well-centered power in the United States to protect and secure, is now attempting to take away. It fortunately happened, and to no state in the Union more than the state in question, that the terms of peace were agreed on before the opposition appeared. Otherwise, there cannot be a doubt that if the same idea of the diminished authority of America had occurred to them at that time as has occurred to them since, but they would have made the same grasp at the fisheries as they have done at the carrying trade. It is surprising that an authority which can be supported with so much ease and so little expense, and capable of such extensive advantages to the country, should be cavilled at by those whose duty it is to watch over it, and whose existence as a people depends upon it. But this, perhaps, will ever be the case, till some misfortune awakens us into reason, and the instance now before us is but a gentle beginning of what America must expect, unless she guards her Union with nicer care and stricter honor. United, she is formidable, and that with the least possible charge a nation can be so. Separated, she is a medley of individual nothings, subject to the sport of foreign nations. It is very probable that the ingenuity of commerce may have found out a method to evade and supersede the intentions of the British in interdicting the trade with the West India Islands. The language of both being the same, and their customs well understood, the vessels of one country may, by deception, pass for those of another. But this would be a practice too debasing for a sovereign people to stoop to, and too profligate not to be discountenanced. An illicit trade, under any shape it can be placed, cannot be carried on without a violation of truth. America is now sovereign and independent, and ought to conduct her affairs in a regular style of character. She has the same right to say that no British vessel shall enter ports, or that no British manufactures shall be imported but in American bottoms, the property of and navigated by American subjects, as Britain has to say the same thing respecting the West Indies. Or she may lay a duty of 10, 15, or 20 shillings per ton, exclusive of other duties, on every British vessel coming from any port of the West Indies, where she is not admitted to trade, the said tonnage to continue as long on her side as the prohibition continues on the other. But it is only by acting in union that the usurpations of foreign nations on the freedom of trade can be counteracted, and security extended to the commerce of America. And when we view a flag, which to the eye is beautiful, and to contemplate its rise and origin inspires a sensation of sublime delight, our national honor must unite with our interest to prevent injury to the one or insult to the other. Signed, Common Sense. End of A Supernumerary Crisis, to the People of America, by Thomas Paine. End of The American Crisis, by Thomas Paine.